Hey, what's up, guys? Today, I'll show you a supernatural horror film named A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 7, New Nightmare. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a shot of a finely crafted metal claw for the nightmare killer Freddy. Heather, who played the protagonist Nancy in the previous episodes, was also present. She shot to fame 10 years prior due to her role in the film. Now a recognized star, she's married to the set's prop master, and they have an adorable son named Dylan. Now she brought her son to the set for a visit. Just as everything seemed calm, the metal claw on the table suddenly gained a consciousness of its own. It went on a killing spree on the set, resulting in the death of 2 crew members and chaos ensued. In the midst of the confusion, Dylan mysteriously vanished right in front of Heather. The terrifying claw set its sights on Heather's husband, lunging towards his face. Heather woke up from her scream, realizing that it was all a nightmare. Upon waking up, she found an earthquake happening outside. She and her husband rushed to their son's room to protect Dylan. Luckily, the earthquake stopped quickly, causing no casualties. They cleaned up their disordered house and prepared to go to work. The husband was heading to another set to make props, while Heather was going to a TV station to participate in an interview celebrating the 10th anniversary of Nightmare on Elm Street. From the couple's conversation, we learn that Heather has been receiving prank calls from someone impersonating Freddy. Despite the troubles, the couple shared an affectionate moment before the husband left for work. After Heather waits for their nanny to arrive, she quickly gives her some instructions before rushing off to participate in the interview program. At the talk show, the host brought up the fans' hopes for Heather to return to the Nightmare on Elm Street crew for the latest sequel. Heather expressed her current desire to spend more time with her family and is not ready to return to the limelight. As the show drew to a close, Robert, the actor who played Freddy, appeared as a surprise guest, setting off a wave of excitement among the audience. Despite Heather knowing this was just an impersonation of Freddy, it stirred uneasiness in her, thinking of her recent nightmares. After the interview, the 2 old friends chatted about their recent lives. Robert mentioned that the movie company indeed had plans for the 2 of them to work together again on a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel. Shortly after their conversation, Heather received an invitation from the movie company's CEO. When they met, the CEO told Heather that the director and screenwriter of the Nightmare on Elm Street series had been having constant nightmares recently, which had inspired him to write a new script. Everyone was hoping she would return to the cast for the latest sequel. Heather, still prioritizing her family, declined his offer. However, the CEO told Heather that her husband had already joined the crew and was involved in creating Freddy's steel claws. This brought back memories of her own nightmares. In the ensuing conversation, Heather discovered that the time when the director started having nightmares almost exactly coincided with her own. What's more, the CEO also received harassing phone calls from someone pretending to be Freddy. All of this made Heather feel that her nightmares were not as simple as she had thought. A worried Heather came home, only to discover that her son was also being plagued by nightmares. He seemed possessed, singing that famous Freddy rhyme. Dylan told her that the dinosaur toy he saw as a protector was mysteriously scratched, leaving 3 claw marks. Sensing that something was off, Heather called her husband, explaining the strange events happening to Dylan, and asked him to come home to care for their son. The husband dropped his work and drove home. But what no one noticed was the Freddy claw he had made had mysteriously vanished. The husband had a 4-hour drive home from the set. Heather had no choice but to put Dylan to bed first. She told him the story of Hansel and Gretel, and they discussed the part where the siblings used breadcrumbs as markers to find their way home. Meanwhile, on his way home, the husband was attacked by Freddy's ghostly claw, causing a serious car accident as he was gutted. Heather witnessed this scene in her nightmare. When she woke up, she learned of her husband's death from the police. Just like the Nightmare on Elm Street movie she starred in, everything from the nightmare had become reality. Heather's husband's death was ruled as due to fatigue driving. At the funeral, Heather hallucinated again. She saw Freddy coming out of the coffin and taking Dylan. Her colleague John woke her up from the hallucination. He was the actor who played the role of Nancy's sheriff father in the Nightmare movie. At night in bed, Dylan started singing Freddy's nursery rhymes as if possessed. Concerned, Heather had no choice but to sleep with him. The next day, Heather discussed the strange happenings with her co-worker John. She thought her family might have a hidden history of mental illness that was passed on to Dylan. John reassured her, saying that Dylan's unusual behavior was only temporary, a result of his father's passing, and that he would recover in due course. While they were talking, Dylan managed to climb to the top of a playground structure. Suddenly, he slipped and fell, but luckily, Heather sprinted like an Olympian and caught Dylan in time, thus averting a disaster. Struggling with these events, Heather called her old friend Robert and vented about her recent misfortunes. She also asked about the progress of the screenplay. Robert told her that the movie script coincidentally included the scene where Dylan climbed the playground facility and fell. This revelation gave Heather goosebumps. Unknown to her, the actor who played Freddy was also tormented by nightmares of Freddy recently. He unconsciously sketched terrifying images of Freddy. Dylan's condition worsened. He began to convulse and foam at the mouth. Heather rushed him to the hospital, but the doctors couldn't determine a clear cause. They decided to admit Dylan for observation. Recalling the recent series of strange events and for her son's safety, Heather decided to seek out the director for help because he was the one person she believed could help. Upon meeting, he revealed to Heather some truths beyond the screenplay. Apparently, throughout human history, there have been legends of a dream demon. This demon, appearing in different forms across the world and across ages, did mercilessly kill people. The dream demon was incredibly powerful and could not be destroyed. However, compelling stories could serve as shackles to confine it. The character of Freddy from the Nightmare on Elm Street series was its most recent shackle. But for the sake of profit, the film company kept remaking the series over the past decade, which resulted in the story becoming dull and boring. This weakened the shackles, allowing the dream demon to wreak havoc in the human world using Freddy's image. Now Heather was the last guardian of these shackles. If the dream demon killed her, it would regain its freedom. The solution the director offered was to shoot another exciting sequel to Nightmare on Elm Street to seal the dream demon again. Although this sounded extremely bizarre, given all the strange things that had happened recently, Heather believed him. She agreed to participate in the latest sequel of Nightmare on Elm Street. The director also promised to complete the screenplay as soon as possible so that the film production could start. But Freddy seemed to have no intention of giving them a breather. The day Heather returned home, she learned from the news that two of her husband's colleagues had also died for unknown reasons, just like the dream she had at the beginning of the movie. A sudden earthquake and blackout occurred, and in the ensuing chaos, Heather waited for the quake to end before going to pick up the coffee machine that had fallen on the floor. Suddenly, the real nightmare killer, Freddy, sprang out from the wardrobe and attacked her. Freddy called Heather Nancy, and their fight was interrupted by another earthquake. Heather temporarily evaded Freddy's pursuit, but her arm was left with claw marks. She thought that Freddy would surely go after her son next, so she immediately went to the hospital. There, she met the nanny. It turned out that the nanny had also seen Dylan being attacked in her nightmare, so she rushed to the hospital to visit. They saw Dylan safe and sound, but the nanny noticed that Heather had a streak of white hair, the same look as Nancy's in Elm Street. The attending physician noticed Heather's wounds and took her to be bandaged. Heather told the doctor she was injured in the earthquake, but the doctor was surprised as there was no seismic activity recorded. Heather had another nightmare, causing a great disturbance. The doctor suspected she had a mental disorder and had security take her to another room for testing. Before leaving, Heather pleaded with the nanny not to let her son fall asleep, but under the doctor's orders, two nurses took advantage of the nanny's inattention and injected Dylan with a sedative, unknowingly delivering him right into Freddy's claws. A sleepy Dylan became the key for Freddy to enter the real world. Upon arriving, Freddy peeled and killed the nanny right in front of everyone. In the ensuing chaos, a frightened Dylan took the opportunity to escape the hospital. Heather realized he must have gone home to find his guardian dinosaur toy. While driving and making a call to John for help, she found her son on the highway, about to cross the road to get home, with Freddy's steel claw swinging him back and forth. In her frantic efforts to catch up with her son, Heather cursed at Freddy, who taunted her to come at him. While crossing the road, she was hit by a speeding car and fell to the ground. Despite the pain, Heather managed to get home, just in time to meet John, who had come to assist. John calmed her down using his words, but not muscles, assuring her that Dylan was safe and unhurt. But then he pulled Heather aside with a strange look on his face. Incredibly, he addressed Heather as Nancy and thought Dylan was his grandson. What's stranger, John had changed his outfit and was now wearing a badge and a handgun, just like his character, a sheriff in Nightmare movie. Heather's outfit had also transformed into Nancy's from the movie. It was at this point that Heather realized Freddy had blurred the lines between reality and the nightmare story. After bidding John farewell, she went back into the house, only to find Dylan had disappeared again. Despite being unplugged, the TV was spontaneously playing the first Nightmare on Elm Street film. It was at the classic scene where Nancy was preparing to catch Freddy in her dream. Upon calming down, Heather found the sleeping pills that her son had left in the house. She remembered a story they had discussed earlier about using breadcrumbs as trail markers in the tale of Hansel and Gretel. So following the trail of the sleeping pills, Heather arrived at Dylan's room. The dinosaur toy Dylan had used as a protector was completely torn apart by Freddy. It appeared that Dylan had been taken by Freddy. Recalling the scene she had just seen on the TV, Heather understood that Freddy was luring her into the dream world. In order to rescue her son, she swallowed a substantial dose of the sleeping pills. She discovered that the space under the covers had become a passage to the dream world. She followed this passage, leading her straight into Freddy's nightmarish castle. Here, Heather discovered the director's script. She was taken aback to find that all her actions were unfolding according to the script. However, the director had not yet written the ending. It was now up to Heather to strive for a happy ending. Suddenly, Dylan ran out from behind, startling Heather so much she almost hurt him. Mother and son exchanged information. Heather learned that Freddy deliberately let Dylan go to find her. Before Heather could catch her breath, Freddy attacked her from behind. Just as Freddy was about to strike her, Dylan picked up a kitchen knife that had fallen on the ground and stabbed it into Freddy's knee. An angered Freddy knocked Heather out and threw her sexy body into the water, then turned to pursue Dylan. Dylan hid in the fireplace. But Freddy, leveraging his dream powers, transformed into Luffy with his elongated arms and grabbed him, opening his mouth wide to swallow him whole, including his smelly part. Just then, Heather regained consciousness, rushed over, and stabbed a knife into Freddy's buttocks. Freddy experienced excruciating pain and let go of Dylan. He then extended his long, snaky tongue to strangle Heather for massage. Seeing a snake nearby, Dylan used his dagger to play a game of whack-a-mole and then stabbed Freddy's tongue, making it torn in half like a snake's tongue. While Freddy was in pain, the two of them pushed him in and turned up the heat. Freddy revealed his demonic form in the fire, causing the nightmare world to collapse. Heather and Dylan escaped the crumbling dream world just before it exploded. The movie ends with Heather in her son's room, reading him the movie script. The Nightmare Killer was once again sealed in the story of Elm Street. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.